seconds, a simple question about charity work spiraled into the most shocking live television meltdown of the year. This is the untold story of the moment Prince Harry was escorted off the Good Morning America set after a heated confrontation that left viewers stunned and the studio in complete chaos. It started like any other Tuesday morning at Good Morning America. The cameras were rolling, the audience was settled in their seats, and Lara Spencer sat across from Prince Harry, ready to discuss his latest humanitarian initiatives. The atmosphere was light, friendly even. Lara had done hundreds of these interviews before. She knew exactly how to make her guests feel comfortable while keeping the conversation engaging for millions of viewers at home. Lara smiled warmly as she began. She said, "Your Royal Highness, thank you so much for being here with us this morning. I know our viewers are excited to hear about the incredible work you have been doing with your foundation. Can you tell us a little bit about what inspired you to focus on mental health awareness for young people?" Prince Harry shifted in his seat, a subtle tension already visible in his posture. His jaw was tight, his eyes had a distant quality to them, as if he was already somewhere else in his mind. He replied, "Well, Lara, I think that is obvious, is it not? Anyone with half a brain can see that young people today are struggling. I am simply doing what anyone in my position should be doing. It is not exactly groundbreaking." The words landed with an unexpected heaviness. In the control room, the director exchanged a quick glance with the senior producer. This was not the tone they had expected. The pre-interview had been cordial, even friendly. Something had shifted. Lara felt it too. She had conducted enough interviews to recognize when a guest was bringing baggage to the table. But she was a professional. She could work with this. She just needed to redirect the energy, bring the focus back to the positive work being done. The studio audience fell silent. You could have heard a pin drop in that moment. The energy had changed completely. What had started as a friendly morning chat was beginning to feel like something else, something uncomfortable. Lara's smile wavered for just a moment, but she maintained her professional composure. Years of experience had taught her how to handle difficult guests. She was not going to let a dismissive comment derail the interview, not this early, not when they had an entire segment planned. She took a breath, reset her energy, and continued, her voice deliberately warm and encouraging. She was going to give him a chance to reset too, to find his way back to a more productive conversation. She said, "Of course, and I think what makes your work particularly special is the personal connection you bring to it. You have spoken openly about your own mental health journey in the past. How has that personal experience shaped the way you approach this work with young people? What do you hope they take away from your foundation's programs?" It was a softball question, an invitation to share something meaningful, something that would resonate with viewers and remind them why they were interested in this interview in the first place. Any experienced public figure would have recognized it for what it was, an opportunity, a chance to connect. But Prince Harry did not take it. Prince Harry leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms across his chest in a posture that screamed defensiveness. His expression had hardened. Whatever had been bothering him before was now coming to the surface. He said, his voice dripping with condescension, "You know, Lara, I find it quite interesting, quite fascinating, really, how American media always wants to dig into personal trauma for entertainment value. It is like a sport for you, people, is it not? Find the pain, expose the wound, get the tears on camera. Is that what this is? Are we here to have a real conversation about meaningful work, or are you just trying to get a soundbite for your highlight reel? Something you can clip and share and get your clicks and your views?" The accusation hung in the air like smoke. It was insulting, it was unfair, and it was completely unprovoked. Lara had asked a thoughtful question, one that actually gave him credit for his vulnerability and authenticity. And he had thrown it back in her face, twisting it into something ugly. In the audience, people shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Several audience members looked at each other with raised eyebrows. This was not what they had come to see. The temperature in the room dropped instantly. The comfortable warmth of morning television evaporated, replaced by an icy tension that everyone could feel. Producers backstage exchanged worried glances. This was live television. There was no pause button, no do-over. Whatever was about to happen was going to happen in front of millions of people. Camera operators looked at each other, their expressions asking the same silent question. Should they keep filming? Should they cut away? But the director's voice came through their earpieces, steady and clear. "Keep rolling. Stay on them." Lara Spencer did not flinch. She sat there, perfectly still, letting his words settle. She had interviewed world leaders who had lied to her face. She had sat across from celebrities having public meltdowns. She had navigated interviews with controversial figures who had tried to intimidate her, manipulate her, derail her. This was not her first rodeo, but it was disappointing. She had genuinely been looking forward to this conversation. She had prepared thoughtful questions. She had wanted to highlight the positive work he was doing. And instead, she was being attacked for doing her job. She kept her voice calm and measured, choosing each word carefully. She was not going to match his hostility. She was not going to give him the satisfaction of seeing her rattled. She said, her tone professional but firm, "I can assure you, Your Royal Highness, that our intention here this morning is simply to have an honest, respectful conversation about the important work you are doing. That is all. Our viewers genuinely want to understand your mission and how they might support it or get involved in similar efforts in their own communities. That is all we are trying to accomplish here today. Nothing more, nothing less." Prince Harry scoffed, actually scoffed, shaking his head with derision. The sound echoed through the studio. He leaned forward now, his earlier defensive posture replaced with something more aggressive. He said, his voice laced with contempt, "Right. An honest conversation. That is rich. That is truly rich, coming from someone who makes a living, a very comfortable living, I might add, sensationalizing people's lives. You sit here in your comfortable chair, in your beautiful studio, asking invasive questions, picking apart people's pain, and then you go home at the end of the day feeling like you have done something important. Tell me, Lara, when was the last time you actually did something genuinely meaningful? When was the last time you got your hands dirty instead of just talking about other people who actually do the real work in the world?" It was a low blow, a personal attack wrapped in self-righteous indignation, and it was wildly off base. Lara Spencer had spent her career not just covering stories, but supporting causes. She had raised millions for charity through her work. She had used her platform to shine light on people and organizations doing incredible things. She had shown up time and time again for her community. But this was not about facts. This was about someone lashing out. Someone who had come into this interview with an axe to grind and was determined to grind it, regardless of who got hurt in the process. The audience gasped. It was not a small gasp either. It was audible, collective, the sound of dozens of people simultaneously shocked by what they were witnessing. Several people in the front row covered their mouths with their hands. Others sat frozen, wide-eyed, unable to believe what they were seeing unfold before them. This was not the charming prince they had come to see. This was not the compassionate advocate they had read about. This was something else entirely. Someone else entirely. Someone bitter and angry and determined to make everyone around him feel as miserable as he apparently felt. Lara took a deep breath, in through the nose, out through the mouth, a technique she had learned years ago for staying centered in difficult moments. Her professional mask was beginning to show small cracks, now, not in her expression, which remained composed, but in her eyes. If you look closely, you could see the hurt there, the disappointment, the frustration of someone who had tried to create space for a meaningful conversation and had been rewarded with hostility. But she held firm. She was not going to abandon her principles just because someone was being difficult. She said, her voice still professional, but with an edge now, a firmness that had not been there before. "I understand that you might feel defensive about certain topics. I understand that you have been through difficult experiences with the media. I truly do. But I think it is important to remember, Your Royal Highness, that we invited you here as a guest to share your story and your work. Nobody is attacking you. Nobody is trying to trap you or embarrass you. We are simply trying to have a conversation. That is all this has ever been. A conversation." Prince Harry stood up suddenly. The movement was so abrupt that it startled everyone in the studio. His microphone nearly fell off his lapel, the wire pulling taut. He did not seem to notice or care. He was beyond caring about the technical details, beyond caring about the cameras, beyond caring about anything except expressing the rage that had been building inside him since the interview began. Maybe before it began. Maybe he had walked into that studio already angry, already looking for a reason to explode. He pointed at Lara, his finger jabbing the air between them like a weapon. His face was flushed, his voice rising with each word. He said, his tone venomous, "This is exactly the problem with you people. This is exactly what is wrong with all of you in this industry. You think you can just parade people in front of cameras, ask invasive questions, dressed up as concern, and pretend it is journalism. You think you can poke and prod and dig into people's lives, and as long as you smile while you do it, as long as you pretend to care, it is somehow acceptable. Well, I have news for you, Lara. You are not a journalist. You are a puppet, a well-paid puppet reading words. Off a teleprompter, but a puppet nonetheless. You do not think for yourself. You do not question anything. You just do what you are told and collect your paycheck. Now it was personal, deeply, undeniably personal. Lara stood as well, rising from her chair with deliberate slowness. Her posture was straight, her shoulders back. Her expression had hardened into something resolute. She had tried to keep things professional. She had tried to give him every opportunity to collect himself, to remember where he was and what he was supposed to be doing here. She had been patient when he was dismissive. She had been gracious when he was rude. She had been understanding when he lashed out. But there was only so much disrespect she could tolerate on her own show, in front of her audience, with her name and reputation on the line. When she spoke, her voice cut through the tension like a blade. It was not loud, but it was powerful. Every word was clear, every syllable deliberate. She said, her, gaze locked on his. I have been doing this job for over 20 years. 20 years of waking up before dawn. 20 years of preparing, researching, caring about the stories we tell and the people we bring to this platform. I have interviewed thousands of people from all walks of life, presidents and teachers, celebrities and everyday heroes, people who have suffered unimaginable loss and people celebrating their greatest triumphs. And I have always treated every single guest with respect and dignity. Every single one. She paused, letting her words hang in the air. The silence was deafening. Every person in that studio was frozen, watching this confrontation unfold in real time. Lara continued, her voice growing stronger. She said, if you came here today looking for a fight, you have picked the wrong person. This is my show. These are my viewers. And I will not stand here and let you disrespect them or me. So I'm going to ask you one more time. Can we continue this conversation in a respectful manner, or do we need to end this interview right now? Prince Harry's face flushed red. He took a step closer to Lara, his voice rising. He said, "In the interview? You do not get to dismiss me, Lara. Do you know who I am? Do you have any idea what I have been through? What I have sacrificed? And you have the audacity to lecture me about respect? This entire charade is beneath me. You are beneath me." That was the line. The moment that changed everything. Lara Spencer did not raise her voice. She did not need to. She simply looked directly into the camera and said, "We are going to take a commercial break." Then she turned to the producers standing just off camera. She said, "Get him out of here. Now." For a moment, nobody moved. The gravity of what was happening was still sinking in. But then, two producers stepped onto the set. They approached Prince Harry carefully, their voices low and urgent. One of them said, "Sir, we need you to come with." Prince Harry whirled around to face them. He said, "You cannot be serious. You are actually throwing me out?" Lara stood her ground, her arms crossed, watching the scene unfold with a mixture of anger and disappointment. The producer spoke again, more firmly this time. He said, "Sir, this interview is over. We need you to leave the set immediately." Prince Harry looked around the studio as if searching for someone who would come to his defense. But there was no one. The crew members avoided his gaze. The audience sat in stunned silence. Even his own team members, who had accompanied him to the studio, looked mortified. He ripped the microphone off his lapel and threw it onto the chair. He said, his voice dripping with contempt, "This is absolutely pathetic. You Americans have no class, no respect, no understanding of what real dignity looks like." He turned one last time to face Lara and said, "You should be ashamed of yourself. All of you should be ashamed." Lara did not respond. She simply watched as the producers escorted him off the set, his angry footsteps echoing through the silent studio. The cameras were still rolling, capturing every moment of this unprecedented scene. Once he disappeared through the studio doors, Lara turned back to face the camera. She took a deep breath, composing herself with the professionalism that had defined her entire career. She said, "Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize that you had to witness that. In all my years of doing this show, I have never had to ask a guest to leave. But I will always stand up for the integrity of this program and the respect we owe to you, our viewers. We believe in having tough conversations. We believe in asking difficult questions. But we also believe in treating people with basic human decency, and we expect the same in return." She paused, her voice softening slightly. She said, "I want to be clear. This was not about titles or status or who has been through more in life. This was about one simple thing: respect. When you come onto this show, whether you are a prince or a teacher or a small business owner, you are our guest. And as our guest, we treat you with respect. All we ask is that you treat us and our viewers with that same respect in return." The audience began to clap, slowly at first, then building into sustained applause. Lara smiled, a genuine smile this time, and nodded her appreciation. She said, "Thank you. Thank you all for being here today and for your understanding." We are going to take that commercial break now, and when we come back, we have an incredible story about a local teacher who is changing lives in her community. Stay with us. As the cameras cut away, Lara finally allowed herself to exhale. Her co-hosts rushed over to check on her. One of them said, "Are you okay?" "That was intense." Lara nodded, still processing what had just happened. She said, "I am fine. I just cannot believe that actually happened." Another co-host put a hand on her shoulder and said, "You handled that perfectly. You gave him every chance to reset, and he just kept pushing." Backstage, the mood was electric with shock and disbelief. Producers were already on their phones, likely dealing with the immediate fallout. Prince Harry and his team had been quickly ushered out of the building through a back entrance, avoiding any further confrontation. One staff member who witnessed the backstage exit later described the prince as still visibly angry, muttering complaints about the treatment he had received. Meanwhile, on social media, the reaction was instantaneous. Within minutes, clips of the confrontation were being shared across every platform. Viewers who had watched it live were trying to process what they had just witnessed. The comment sections were flooded with opinions. Some people defended the prince, saying that the media had been too harsh on him for years and that his frustration was understandable. But the overwhelming majority sided with Lara. One viewer wrote, "Lara Spencer showed incredible professionalism and grace under pressure. She tried multiple times to redirect the conversation, and he just kept attacking her. She had every right to ask him to leave." Another commented, "I have never seen anything like this on morning television. Prince Harry came across as entitled and disrespectful. Lara gave him so many chances to course correct, and he refused every single one." Back in the studio, Lara was preparing for the next segment. She had pushed the incident to the back of her mind, focusing instead on the inspiring story she was about to share with viewers. This was her gift, her ability to compartmentalize and stay present for her audience, no matter what had just happened. As the commercial break ended and the cameras came back to life, Lara Spencer was smiling again, ready to continue the show. She said, "Welcome back, everyone. Now, I want to introduce you to someone truly special." Sarah Martinez is a third-grade teacher from Brooklyn who noticed that many of her students were coming to school hungry. Instead of just feeling bad about it, she decided to do something. She started a breakfast program that now feeds over 200 children every single morning before school starts. As Lara interviewed the teacher, her warmth and genuine interest were on full display. This was the Lara Spencer that viewers knew and loved, kind, curious, and completely present with her guests. The contrast between this interview and the disaster that had preceded it could not have been more stark. Where Prince Harry had been defensive and hostile, Sarah Martinez was humble and passionate. Where he had demanded special treatment, she simply wanted to talk about the children she served. The interview was a masterclass in everything morning television should be: uplifting, informative, and emotionally resonant. As it concluded, Lara thanked Sarah for her work and urged viewers to support local programs in their own communities. She said, "This is what makes a real difference in the world. Not grand speeches or photo opportunities, but people like Sarah who show up every single day to help the people right in front of them." The words hung in the air, an unspoken commentary on everything that had happened earlier. The audience understood. They clapped enthusiastically as Sarah waved goodbye and left the set. As the show wrapped up for the morning, Lara addressed the camera one final time. She said, "Thank you all for spending your morning with us. It has been quite a show today, has it not? But through it all, I hope you remember the good people doing good work, like Sarah. Those are the stories that matter. Those are the conversations worth having. We will see you tomorrow morning." When the cameras finally stopped rolling and the studio lights dimmed, Lara sat in her chair for a long moment, letting the weight of the morning settle over her. A producer approached and asked if she wanted to talk about what had happened. She shook her head and said, "Not right now. Right now, I just want to go home, have a cup of tea, and forget this morning ever happened." But she knew she would not forget. None of them would. This was the kind of moment that gets talked about for years. As she gathered her things and prepared to leave, members of the crew came up to her one by one, offering words of support and admiration. A camera operator said, "That took guts, Lara. Not many people would have stood up to him like that." A production assistant added, "You kept your cool the whole time. Even when he was insulting you, you stayed professional." Lara smiled tiredly and said, "I just did what anyone should do when someone disrespects them and disrespects you all. We work too hard on this show to let anyone, I do not care what their title is, come in here and treat us like we are beneath them." She left the studio that day knowing she had done the D's right thing, even if it meant ending one of the most anticipated interviews of the season. In the days that followed, the incident would be analyzed and discussed endlessly. But in that moment, walking out into the bright New York morning, Lara Spencer felt something unexpected. Relief. Relief that she had trusted her instincts. Relief that she had stood up for herself and her team. And relief that, despite the chaos, the show had gone on. The confrontation between Lara Spencer and Prince Harry would become one of the most talked about moments in morning television history. Not because of scandal or sensationalism, but because it was a stark reminder of something fundamental. Respect is not negotiable. It does not matter if you are royalty or a regular person. It does not matter if you have faced incredible challenges or lived a privileged life. When you are a guest in someone's house, on someone's show, you treat them with respect. And if you cannot do that, you should not be surprised when you are asked to leave. Lara Spencer understood this deeply. It was why she had built a career spanning decades. It was why viewers trusted her. It was why, even in the face of hostility from someone with a royal title, she never wavered. She knew her worth. She knew the worth of her team. And she knew the worth of the viewers who welcomed her into their homes every single morning. That knowledge gave her the strength to do what needed to be done, even when it was uncomfortable, even when it would create headlines. The next morning, when Lara returned to the studio, there was an energy in the air that had not been there before. The crew greeted her with renewed appreciation. They had always respected her, but now there was something more: pride. They were proud to work with someone who had the backbone to stand up for what was right, regardless of the consequences. As Lara took her seat and the familiar opening music began to play, she looked into the camera with the same warm smile viewers had come to love. She said, "Good morning, America. Thank you for joining us today. We have an incredible show lined up for you." And just like that, she was back. Professional, warm, and ready to bring meaningful conversations to millions of viewers. The incident with Prince Harry was behind her, a chapter closed. But the lesson it taught would resonate far beyond that one chaotic morning. It would remind everyone watching that dignity and respect are not about titles or status. They are about how we treat each other, especially when the cameras are rolling and the whole world is watching. In the end, the confrontation was not just about two people clashing on live television. It was about values. It was about integrity. It was about knowing when to draw a line and having the courage to enforce it. Lara Spencer had done all of that with grace and strength. She had given Prince Harry every opportunity to course correct, every chance to engage in the kind of meaningful dialogue that her show was built on. When he refused, when he chose contempt over conversation, she made the only decision she could make. She protected her show, her team, and her viewers from someone who had come not to share but to belittle. The story of that morning would be told and retold, each time with a slightly different perspective. But the core truth remained unchanged. On that Tuesday morning in the Good Morning America studio, when things went terribly wrong, Lara Spencer showed the world what real professionalism looks like. She showed that kindness is not the same as weakness, that patience has limits, that respect is earned, not demanded. And most importantly, she showed that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply stand your ground and say, "Enough." That is what happened when a royal guest forgot that respect goes both ways. That is what happened when entitlement collided with integrity. That is what happened in 32 seconds that changed everything. And that is why, long after the headlines faded and the social media storm passed, people would remember not the outbursts, but the response. Not the insults, but the composure.